You say you've moved on. You tell your friends you're done, that you're stronger now, that you've learned your lesson. But then, why does your chest still tighten every time your phone lights up? Why does your heart still skip, hoping it's them, even after everything they did? Don't lie to yourself. You don't miss the person, they're gone. What you miss is the illusion, the fantasy you built around them, the reflection of what you wanted to see. You fell in love not with who they truly were, but with the version of yourself you thought you could become in their presence. That's the cruel beauty of attachment. It's never really about them. It's about the mirror they held up to your own emptiness. Think about it. They didn't just make you feel loved, they made you feel alive. Seen. Wanted. As if suddenly, all the chaos inside you made sense when they looked at you a certain way. But here's the truth most people can't face: you weren't addicted to the person. You were addicted to the feeling of matching. You were addicted to the emotional high of being chosen. And when that high vanished, what was left wasn't love, it was withdrawal. The same part of the brain that reacts to drugs lights up when you're in love, and when that connection breaks, your body goes into panic mode. That's why it hurts so much. You're not weak. You're chemically wired for attachment. But emotional maturity begins when you stop confusing withdrawal for love. Carl Jung once said, "What you do not make conscious, you will live as fate." And maybe that's exactly what's happening to you right now. You think you're dealing with a breakup, but you're actually standing in front of a mirror, facing the parts of yourself you've refused to see. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every unanswered text is your unconscious trying to say, "Look here. There's something inside you that still needs healing." But instead of listening, you chase closure, hoping the same person who broke you will somehow fix you. You replay conversations, stalk their updates, rationalize their coldness, all because you're terrified to face the silence that comes when they're gone. That silence isn't punishment. It's an invitation to finally meet yourself. Most people mistake attachment for love because they've never known love that doesn't hurt. Maybe that's how you grew up, believing that affection must be earned, that care comes with conditions. Maybe you learned too early that to be loved, you had to perform. So when someone mirrored your pain back to you, when they gave you just enough warmth to keep you hoping, you called it love. But that wasn't love. That was your childhood wound replaying itself through an adult body. You weren't in a relationship. You were in a cycle. And every time they pulled away, it wasn't rejection, it was a reminder of an old story you never finished reading. Real love doesn't make you anxious. It doesn't keep you begging for scraps of attention or decoding mixed signals at 2 in the morning. That's not romance, that's emotional survival. The butterflies you felt? They weren't passion, they were your nervous system remembering trauma and calling it excitement. The push and pull, the endless hope followed by disappointment, it's not chemistry. It's chaos disguised as connection. And deep down, you know it. You know that every time you broke your own boundaries to keep them close, something inside you screamed, "This isn't right." But you silenced that voice because losing them felt scarier than losing yourself. And that's where the illusion takes full control. You start telling yourself stories, maybe they'll change, maybe it's my fault, maybe if I just love them harder. But what you're really saying is, maybe if I keep betraying myself long enough, I'll finally feel enough. You mistake endurance for devotion. You confuse pain with depth. You convince yourself that loving them through the worst will earn you the right to be loved back. But listen, suffering doesn't make love real. It just makes it tragic. So why do we do it? Why do smart, strong, capable adults keep returning to the very people who break them? Because at some level, pain feels familiar. The human psyche craves what it recognizes, even when it's toxic. Your mind isn't searching for joy, it's searching for home. And if home once meant instability, silence, or conditional affection, you will unconsciously seek it out again and again, hoping this time it will end differently. But it never does. The script doesn't change until you do. Here's the hard truth: you can't heal by chasing what hurt you. You can't find peace in the same place you lost yourself. And no amount of closure will fill the void that was never someone else's responsibility to fill. Healing begins the moment you stop trying to get answers from people who are incapable of giving them. It begins when you realize that love isn't supposed to feel like begging. That being seen isn't supposed to cost your self-respect. That someone choosing you means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to keep them. If this hurts to hear, good. The truth is supposed to sting before it sets you free. Because real love, the kind that heals instead of wounds, can only exist once you stop worshiping the illusion. Once you stop chasing the high of being chosen and start choosing yourself. You don't need someone to validate your worth. You don't need to perform to deserve affection. What you need is to sit in that silence you've been running from and finally ask, what did I hope they would give me that I still refuse to give myself? That's where the real work begins. Not in the next relationship, not in the next distraction, but right there, in the space between heartbreak and healing. That's where you meet your own reflection without distortion. That's where illusion dies and truth begins. And that's where love, real love, finally starts, not as a rescue, not as addiction, but as recognition. The moment you stop mistaking your wounds for romance is the moment you stop repeating your past and start writing a new story. Are you ready to stop craving what broke you? Then stay. Because what comes next isn't about forgetting them, it's about remembering yourself. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, they complete me? Be honest. You've probably said it or at least felt it once. That instant, electric connection. That strange sense of recognition, like you've known them forever. It feels cosmic, doesn't it? Like destiny just placed them in your path. But here's the uncomfortable truth, it's not destiny. It's your unconscious showing you a reflection of yourself. What feels like magic is often projection. What feels like love is often the mirror of your own unmet parts shining back at you. Carl Jung said that every person we meet is a mirror of our psyche. When we fall in love, especially intensely or irrationally, what's really happening is that our unconscious finds in the other person a surface onto which it can project everything we have buried, the dreams, the emotions, the traits we've rejected, the parts we long to reclaim. That's why it feels so powerful, so consuming. Because it's not just about them. It's about you. You are seeing in that person the image of your own inner world, what you want, what you fear, what you've denied. Think about that one person who lit a fire in you. They might have seemed mysterious, confident, emotionally unavailable, or perhaps gentle, nurturing, endlessly forgiving. Ask yourself, what did they awaken in you? Did they make you feel small or seen? Did they draw out your longing to be cared for, or your hunger to chase and prove yourself? That feeling wasn't created by them, it was activated by them. They touched a nerve that was already there, buried deep within you, waiting for recognition. When you fell for them, you weren't falling into love, you were falling into yourself, or rather, into the part of yourself that you had forgotten. Jung called these inner figures the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies that live inside each of us. If you're a woman, your animus might appear in a man who seems powerful, decisive, even controlling, the traits you've been taught to suppress. If you're a man, your anima might emerge in a woman who seems soft, intuitive, emotional, the qualities you've been trained to ignore. The attraction feels magnetic because your psyche recognizes its own missing half. It's not about romance. It's about completion. But here's the danger, when you mistake that projection for love, you become dependent on it. You begin to believe that only through this person can you feel whole. And then the illusion begins to crack. The more real they become, the more disappointed you feel. They stop fitting the image your mind created. They become human, flawed, inconsistent, unpredictable. That's when the emotional storm hits. You start saying things like, they changed, or I don't know who they are anymore. But they didn't change. You just stopped projecting. The mirror shattered, and what's left is reality. Yet instead of facing it, you cling even harder, trying to force the reflection to return. You chase the ghost of your own fantasy. This is where obsession is born. The more you lose your projection, the more you feel like you're losing yourself. You text them, you check their socials, you reread old messages, all desperate attempts to reattach to the version of yourself that you saw in their eyes. Because deep down, what terrifies you most isn't losing them. It's losing that feeling of wholeness that they temporarily gave you. Jung called this the trap of projection, and it's the reason why people get stuck in the same kind of relationships over and over. Different faces, same story. Each time, the unconscious tries again, hoping you'll finally recognize the pattern, that you're not meant to find yourself in someone else's reflection, but to integrate what they mirrored within you. Until you do that, you'll keep searching for completion in other people, confusing comfort with chemistry and intensity with intimacy. So, how do you break the mirror without breaking yourself? First, you have to acknowledge what you projected. That requires brutal honesty. What did this person represent to you? Maybe they made you feel wanted when you've always felt invisible. Maybe they gave you chaos because you confused chaos with love. Maybe they were distant, and you kept chasing them because deep down, you were trying to heal the wound of a parent who never saw you. It's not about blame. It's about awareness. Every relationship is a classroom, and every heartbreak is an exam that asks, what are you still refusing to learn about yourself? When you start to see relationships through this lens, something incredible happens. Power returns to you. You stop feeling like a victim of love and start becoming a student of your own psyche. You realize that the people who trigger you the most are the ones showing you the parts of yourself that need healing. The person who rejected you might be the mirror of your own self-rejection. The one who belittled you might reflect how small you secretly feel inside. The one who ignored you might embody the voice that says you're not worth attention. When you see this, the anger softens. Not because what they did was okay, but because you understand what it revealed. Real healing begins when you turn the mirror inward. When you stop asking, why did they do this to me, and start asking, why did I allow it? When you stop chasing reflection and start reclaiming projection. That's when relationships stop being prisons and start becoming paths back to yourself. So, the next time you catch yourself idealizing someone, pause. Ask yourself, what am I seeing in them that I've lost touch with in me? If they seem fearless, maybe it's because you've buried your courage. If they seem radiant, maybe it's because you've dimmed your own light. If they make you feel alive, maybe it's because you've forgotten how to live without external validation. Every projection is an invitation to remember, reclaim, and reintegrate. The mirror effect is both painful and sacred. It hurts because it shatters illusion, but it's sacred because it reveals truth. The people who broke you also showed you what was broken within you. The people you loved the most weren't random, they were the unconscious guides of your inner evolution. When you finally understand that, you stop chasing reflections and start building reality. You stop begging for love and start becoming it. That's the power of awareness. That's how you stop being haunted by the mirror and start using it as a tool for transformation. You are not half of a whole. You are already complete. You just forgot, and sometimes it takes losing someone else to finally see yourself. Let's talk about the performance. The mask. The version of you that smiles when you want to scream, that says it's fine when it's not, that tries to be perfect just to be loved. You didn't create that mask because you're fake. You created it because once upon a time, you learned that love had conditions. Maybe as a child you were rewarded for being the good one, the quiet one, the helper, the achiever. Maybe you were taught that love was earned through performance. And now, as an adult, you keep playing that same role, in your relationships, at work, even in your own home, terrified that if you ever stop performing, people will walk away. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the social face we wear to survive. It's not inherently bad. We all need a persona to navigate the world. The problem begins when the mask stops being a tool and becomes your identity. When you forget there's a real person underneath. You wake up one day and realize you've spent years trying to be what everyone else needed, but you've forgotten who you are. You've become a reflection of expectations, polished, functional, admired even, but hollow inside. Think about how many times you've said yes when your whole body screamed no. How many times you agreed just to avoid conflict, apologized when you weren't wrong, laughed at jokes that cut deep, or kept quiet because speaking your truth might make someone uncomfortable. You told yourself it's easier this way. But easy doesn't mean harmless. Every time you silence your truth for approval, you abandon yourself a little more. And self-abandonment is the slowest form of self-destruction. This is how emotional dependency is born. You start living through the eyes of others. Their approval becomes your oxygen. You wait for validation the way a plant waits for sunlight. But here's the trap: external validation is never enough. You can receive endless compliments, affection, promises, and still feel empty, because deep down, you know you're being loved for the role, not for the real you. You've built a beautiful cage and called it love. But it's still a cage. That's why you feel anxious when someone pulls away or goes silent. It's not just fear of losing them. It's fear of losing the reflection of yourself you've built in their eyes. You've outsourced your identity to the people you want to please. And every time they withdraw affection, you feel like you're disappearing. That's not love, that's dependency disguised as devotion. This is the moment where many people confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice. You tell yourself you're being understanding, patient, forgiving. But what you're actually doing is negotiating your worth. You lower your boundaries to earn affection. You become hyper-tuned to others' moods, always scanning the emotional room to adjust your behavior. That's not empathy, that's survival. You're reading danger, not connection. You're trying to prevent abandonment before it happens. And that constant vigilance is what we call anxiety. Here's the truth you've been avoiding: your anxiety isn't random. It's not something broken inside you. It's a message from the parts of you you've silenced for too long. The tension, the overthinking, the sleepless nights, they're not punishments. They're signals. Your mind is screaming, stop performing. Stop betraying yourself. Because every time you ignore your needs for someone else's comfort, you teach your nervous system that authenticity is unsafe. You teach your body that love requires shrinking. You may think this is noble, to give, to adapt, to please, but there's nothing noble about abandoning your soul to keep the peace. Real love cannot exist without authenticity. Real connection cannot grow where truth is not welcome. And yet, so many of us continue the performance because we're terrified of what will happen if we take off the mask. We think we'll be rejected, alone, unloved. But here's the paradox: you're already lonely behind the mask. You're already rejected by yourself. So what does it look like to stop performing? It's not about becoming selfish or cold. It's about returning to honesty. It's about learning to say, no, that doesn't work for me, and trusting that the right people will stay. It's about expressing what you truly feel without dressing it up to sound polite or digestible. It's about choosing truth over approval. Because every time you choose truth, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You might lose people along the way. Some will leave when they realize you're no longer the version of you that served their comfort. That's okay. Not everyone deserves access to your truth. But what you gain is infinitely more powerful: peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on someone else's reaction. The kind that comes from living in alignment with your own values. And let's be honest, it won't happen overnight. You've been performing for years, maybe decades. Taking off the mask will feel like standing naked under a harsh light. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable, even guilty. That's normal. You've been programmed to equate pleasing with safety. But safety built on self-betrayal isn't safety at all, it's a slow erasure of who you are. When you finally stop performing, something incredible happens. The anxiety starts to quiet down. Not because life gets easier, but because your inner world finally aligns with your outer actions. You stop living in two realities, the one you show and the one you suppress. You stop fighting yourself. That inner conflict, the tension between the persona and the authentic self, is what has been draining your energy all along. You deserve love that doesn't require a performance. You deserve to be seen not for what you do, but for who you are. And that begins the moment you decide that your truth matters more than someone's temporary approval. The mask might have helped you survive once, but now it's suffocating you. It's time to breathe again. So let me ask you, who are you when no one's watching? When there's no one to impress, no one to please, no one to perform for. That person, raw, flawed, unfiltered, that's the real you. And that's who deserves your loyalty first. Because until you learn to love that version of yourself, every relationship will feel like an act. It's time to take off the mask. The world doesn't need another perfect performance. It needs the truth, your truth. And that begins right now, with one simple decision, to stop betraying yourself in the name of being loved. Because the love that demands your silence is not love. It's fear wearing a smile. And you, finally, are done performing for it. You call it anxiety, but what if it's something deeper? What if it's not an illness to fix, but a language your soul has been speaking for years, and you just never learned how to listen? We live in a culture that tells us to silence discomfort. Take a pill. Meditate it away. Stay busy. But anxiety isn't the enemy. It's the messenger. It's your psyche banging on the walls, shouting, something's off. You've betrayed yourself again. Every sleepless night, every wave of panic, every moment your chest tightens for no reason, those are not random attacks. They're alarms. Your inner world is on fire, and you keep pretending you don't smell the smoke. Carl Jung said that neurosis is the suffering of a soul that has not discovered its meaning. And that's exactly what anxiety is, the pain of a divided self. One part of you is screaming for truth, and the other part keeps playing the same old performance, desperate to be loved, desperate to stay safe. You're living two lives at once, the one you show the world, and the one that's dying to breathe underneath. That gap between them is where anxiety is born. It's the tension of living as someone you're not, of swallowing your truth every day until it burns your insides. Think about when anxiety hits the hardest. It's not when you're in danger. It's when you're in dissonance. It's when you're pretending to be fine while you're falling apart. It's when you're saying yes while your heart screams no. It's when you're staying in a relationship that's long expired or working a job that's slowly killing your spirit. Your body knows before your mind admits it. That's why your heart races. That's why your stomach knots up. Your nervous system is trying to drag you back to authenticity. It's not betraying you, it's begging you to stop betraying yourself. But instead of listening, most people do the opposite. They double down on control. They numb themselves with distractions, scrolling, drinking, working, shopping, performing, anything to not feel. They treat anxiety like a malfunction instead of a mirror. Yet the more you run from it, the louder it gets. Because the truth always demands to be felt, and the longer you resist, the more violent its return. That panic attack you had? That wasn't weakness. That was your body revolting against silence. Let's be real, our culture doesn't teach us how to feel. It teaches us how to function. How to keep producing, keep smiling, keep pretending. But emotions don't vanish just because you suppress them. They wait. They collect interest. And when the pressure becomes too much, they explode, in your chest, in your relationships, in your thoughts at 3 a.m. That's anxiety. The aftermath of years of emotional neglect. You can't heal anxiety by controlling it. You heal it by listening to it. By asking, what part of me have I ignored for too long? Maybe it's the creative side you buried to be practical. Maybe it's the angry child you shamed into silence. Maybe it's the exhausted adult who's sick of being strong all the time. Anxiety is what happens when you force those parts to live underground. They start scratching at the walls of your consciousness, trying to come home. Jung believed that symptoms are symbols. Every pain, every fear carries a message from the unconscious. The problem is that most people treat the symptom and never decode the symbol. They medicate the feeling without exploring its meaning. But what if you sat with your anxiety instead of fighting it? What if you asked it, what are you trying to show me? You'd be surprised how honest it gets. Maybe it tells you, I'm tired of pretending. Maybe it whispers, you've stayed too long. Maybe it screams, you're meant for more than this. That's not madness. That's awareness trying to break through the noise. Here's something most people don't realize: anxiety is not the opposite of peace. It's the path to peace. Because it's the signal that something in your life is demanding change. The discomfort is sacred. It's the birthplace of transformation. Every breakthrough starts with unrest, with the unbearable realization that you can't keep living the same way. The goal isn't to silence anxiety, but to translate it, to understand what your inner world is trying to rebuild through that tension. So, when anxiety comes, don't run. Don't numb it. Don't label yourself broken. Instead, breathe and listen. Notice where in your body it lives: your chest, your throat, your gut. Those are not random places. They're emotional maps. A tight chest often means suppressed grief. A knot in the stomach often points to fear of the unknown. A lump in the throat? Unspoken truth. Your body has been carrying the conversations your mind avoids. It's time to start listening. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. Growth always is. You'll want to escape, to go back to the illusion of control. But you've already tried that. It didn't work. What if, this time, you tried courage instead? Sit with the fear. Let it speak. It's not trying to destroy you, it's trying to guide you back home. Because beneath the panic, beneath the tightness, beneath the chaos, there's always a message waiting to be heard: you are not living your truth. The moment you start aligning your life with what's real, saying what you mean, setting boundaries, walking away from what drains you, something miraculous happens. The anxiety doesn't vanish overnight, but it begins to soften. Because now it doesn't have to scream to get your attention. You've learned to listen to the whisper. That's how healing begins, not by escaping discomfort, but by embracing it as the doorway to yourself. So, the next time your heart races and your breath shortens, remember this: it's not an attack. It's a wake-up call. Your soul is reminding you that you've spent too long living outside of yourself. And maybe, just maybe, the peace you're searching for isn't out there, it's waiting on the other side of your own honesty. Anxiety is not a curse. It's your soul trying to come home. You think you're choosing love. You think you're choosing chemistry, connection, fate. But what if I told you that half of the people you've ever fallen for were chosen not by your heart, but by your shadow? That hidden part of you that you pretend doesn't exist, the one made of anger, jealousy, shame, and fear. The part you buried because someone once told you it was too much, too loud, or too wrong. You thought you killed it. But you didn't. You just buried it alive. And buried things don't disappear. They control you from the dark. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, everything about you that you refuse to acknowledge, but that still lives inside you. And the wild thing is, it doesn't just sit quietly. It moves. It chooses. It attracts. It builds your patterns. When you meet someone who triggers something deep, irrational, electric, it's rarely coincidence. It's the shadow saying, "Ah, there you are. Time for another lesson." You think you're meeting a soulmate, but you're meeting a mirror. That's why you keep finding the same story in different bodies. You break up with one person, swear you'll never repeat that mistake, and a few months later, you meet someone new, only to realize it's the same dynamic wearing a different face. You're drawn to emotionally unavailable people because deep down, you've never felt safe being emotionally open. You chase approval from cold partners because you've spent your whole life chasing the warmth of those who couldn't give it. You fall for manipulators because your shadow is addicted to the chaos that feels like home. You don't choose pain on purpose. You choose what's familiar. Here's the part that stings: you attract what you refuse to face. If you repress your anger, you'll fall for someone who expresses it for you, someone controlling, explosive, dominant. If you deny your own needs, you'll end up with a partner who's selfish, forcing you to confront the truth that you never learned to prioritize yourself. If you hide your desire for power, you'll find yourself submitting to people who wield it carelessly. It's not punishment. It's your psyche's way of dragging your darkness into the light. The universe will keep giving you the same lesson in new packaging until you finally say, "Enough." I see it now. That's what the shadow does. It recreates the wound until you learn to heal it. And that's why every relationship that broke you was also trying to wake you up. Every heartbreak wasn't failure, it was feedback. But most people never see it that way. They keep blaming luck, timing, or the other person's flaws, never realizing that the real battlefield is inside. You can leave the toxic partner, block the number, move cities, but if you don't confront your shadow, it'll just ride shotgun to your next relationship. So, what does it mean to face the shadow? It means admitting that you're not only the victim in your story. It means taking responsibility for the patterns you keep repeating, not out of guilt, but out of awareness. Maybe part of you enjoys the drama because it makes you feel alive. Maybe you sabotage good people because peace feels uncomfortable. Maybe you push love away because deep down you don't believe you deserve it. This isn't self-blame. It's self-honesty. You can't change what you won't name. Facing your shadow is the most uncomfortable, courageous act you'll ever do. It's looking at the ugliest parts of yourself and saying, I see you, and I'm not running anymore. It's admitting that sometimes you manipulate. Sometimes you cling. Sometimes you punish. Sometimes you crave validation more than truth. It's realizing that the monster under the bed was always a part of you, and that it's not there to destroy you, but to demand integration. The shadow only becomes dangerous when it's denied. Once you face it, it loses its power to control you. Here's the paradox: the very traits you've repressed are the ones holding your strength. Your anger hides your boundaries. Your envy hides your ambition. Your pride hides your worth. Your fear hides your sensitivity. Every piece of darkness contains a fragment of light waiting to be reclaimed. When you integrate the shadow, you stop needing relationships to act out your unfinished business. You stop seeking mirrors in others because you've already looked into your own. So how do you start? You start by observing your patterns without judgment. Notice who you're drawn to and ask why. What emotional need are they fulfilling for you? What wound do they scratch open? Then, instead of chasing them, turn inward. Ask yourself, where does this come from in me? You might trace it back to childhood, to a parent, to a memory you thought you'd buried. That's the moment healing begins. Because you can't change what you don't understand. This process isn't glamorous. It's messy, raw, and humbling. You'll resist it. Your ego will fight to stay in control. But the longer you resist your shadow, the louder it plays out through your relationships. It will keep choosing the people who hurt you until you finally learn to stop outsourcing your healing. Every time you say, why does this always happen to me? Your shadow whispers, because you still don't see me. But when you do, when you finally turn inward instead of outward, everything shifts. You stop being addicted to chaos. You stop romanticizing pain. You start craving peace instead of drama. You start setting boundaries without guilt. Because now you've made peace with yourself. You don't need another person to mirror your worth. You already know it. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Facing your shadow is how you take your fate back. It's how you stop being the victim of your patterns and start becoming the author of your story. The next time you feel pulled towards someone who feels too familiar, pause. That's not chemistry. That's your shadow calling. And this time, you have a choice. You can keep playing the same game, or you can turn on the light. Because the only way out of the darkness is through it, and the only way to stop repeating pain is to meet the parts of yourself you've been afraid to love. There comes a moment when you get tired of the war inside yourself. Tired of analyzing every message, of shrinking to fit, of being two people, the one you show to the world and the one that quietly falls apart when no one's watching. That exhaustion you feel isn't weakness, it's the beginning of awakening. Because the truth is, you can't live divided forever. There's only so long you can carry the weight of pretending before your soul demands honesty. That breaking point you're scared of, that's not your end. That's your rebirth. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are beneath the masks, the projections, the wounds. It's the moment when you stop asking, who do they want me to be, and start asking, who am I when no one needs anything from me? Individuation is not some peaceful meditation retreat. It's a confrontation. It's looking at your reflection and realizing that half the pain in your life came from chasing people who mirrored your own disconnection. It's realizing that healing isn't about getting back to who you were before the heartbreak. It's about becoming the person who can no longer be broken in the same way. You start to understand that freedom isn't found in control, but in surrender. Not the kind of surrender that makes you powerless, but the kind that makes you authentic. You stop forcing relationships that drain you. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop waiting for closure from the ones who never gave you truth. Because now you know the real closure comes from clarity, your own. This is where you begin the sacred work of reintegration. All those pieces you once rejected, the anger, the fear, the sensitivity, the ambition, they start to return home. You stop calling them flaws and start seeing them as fragments of your wholeness. You realize that your softness isn't weakness, it's empathy. Your anger isn't shameful, it's a compass pointing toward injustice. Your fear isn't cowardice, it's awareness that deserves compassion. Integration is about embracing every contradiction within you and saying, yes, this is me. All of it. Because wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means inclusion. Something powerful happens when you reach this stage. You begin to see that peace isn't something you find through another person, it's something you build within yourself. You stop begging for love and start embodying it. You stop chasing people who make you question your worth and start gravitating toward those who honor it. You don't confuse drama for passion anymore, because you've learned to recognize that peace can feel unfamiliar when you've lived in chaos for too long. But let's be honest, choosing yourself after years of self-abandonment is not easy. At first, it feels empty. When you stop chasing, there's silence. When you stop people-pleasing, there's space. When you stop performing, there's loneliness. That emptiness isn't punishment. It's purification. It's the space your truth needs to breathe again. The void you feel isn't the absence of love, it's the absence of illusion. And that's where real healing begins. You'll notice that your definition of love changes. What once felt thrilling now feels unstable. What once drew you in now repels you. You no longer crave the roller coaster, you crave peace. You no longer seek validation, you seek alignment. You begin to understand that love isn't about losing yourself, it's about finding someone who reminds you how to stay rooted in yourself. You start to love differently, not to fill a void, but to expand your life. And here's the miracle, when you reconnect with your own center, you stop needing others to complete you. You stop performing to be seen. You stop fearing rejection because you've already accepted yourself. That's liberation. Not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet kind, the kind where you wake up one morning and realize you're no longer begging for love, chasing apologies, or explaining your worth. You're just living. Whole. Calm. Free. But liberation isn't a one-time event, it's a practice. You'll still have days when the old patterns whisper, maybe if I just try harder, or maybe they've changed. You'll still feel the pull to slip back into old roles. That's okay. Growth isn't linear. Healing isn't about never falling back, it's about noticing when you do and choosing differently. You'll start catching yourself mid-thought, saying, no, that's the old me. That's progress. Every boundary you hold, every time you say no instead of over-explaining, every moment you choose truth over comfort, you're reinforcing your wholeness. Integration means you no longer split your life into before and after, good and bad, love and pain. You start to see that every chapter was necessary. The heartbreak taught you self-respect. The anxiety taught you awareness. The loneliness taught you independence. The shadow taught you humility. And all of it brought you here, to this moment of clarity, where you finally understand that what you were searching for outside was inside you all along. So now, the question isn't how do I find love, but how do I live from love? How do I move through the world without betraying myself? How do I speak from truth instead of fear? Because once you start living from that place, everything changes. The people who match your energy find you. The ones who fed on your self-doubt disappear. Life stops feeling like survival and starts feeling like creation. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's what this entire journey has been about, not becoming someone new, but remembering who you've always been beneath the pain, the roles, the illusions. Integration isn't about fixing yourself, it's about finally coming home. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped chasing love and started embodying it? What would your life look like if you stopped running from your own reflection and decided to live from your truth, fully, unapologetically, wholeheartedly? The world doesn't need another perfect person. It needs a whole one. And maybe, just maybe, that's been your calling all along. Because the moment you stop fighting yourself is the moment you become unstoppable. That's not just healing. That's freedom. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.